As we head into week 11, we get to add one more name to the list of the walking wounded. I guess not really walking anymore. Dak Prescott out for the year. And that has been the theme of this season. Injuries galore. Jamar Chase going off. The only good thing in fantasy football, it seems, this year. Of course, we're going to do what we always do here on Tuesdays. We're going to look at the top scorers in the world of fantasy football overall the course of this year. Let me put on this one instead. And also, we're going to try to figure out who's going to be the chalk heading in the fantasy football playoffs. I was playing around on BBM V before this one, and I think I've got some good reads on it. Well, let's talk about the top scorers overall. Yesterday, fun Monday night slate. Hopefully you guys had good results on it. Had another top 300 lineup, so I'm building some okay ones, just not getting all the way up there, unfortunately. But was an ugly game. Was not as fun of a game as I think people would have hoped for based upon that total, but still competitive game. It's football. What are we going to do? And at least some decent fantasy scores on that one to take away from it. Overall, top scorers on the year. And I guess at this point, I should probably give my little mission statement, I guess my opening soliloquy, where we are in best ball overall. As we're heading into this last few weeks, definitely going to be a lot of movement going around, especially with all the week 14 buys. That's the big thing that I'm most concerned about. I basically have 3 weeks to put up some really big scores because once week 14 hits, I still have teams that should be able to put out rosters theoretically with how I drafted, but still a lot of guys out. Houston out that week, Baltimore out that week, Washington out that week, Denver out that week, New England out that week. There may even be one I'm forgetting in that. So week 14, having that many teams out, that could alone make a really big movements here in terms of what's advancing, what's not, what's cashing on drafters, what's not. So that's sort of the main thing to keep in mind here. For me, I think this last week was not good, even though my advance rate went up a little bit. Getting just another dog shit game from Jaden Daniels, or like really, his floor game wasn't good. Jamar Chase, a guy who did not have enough exposure to amidst all the receivers I took in the first round. I was fading him for some other guys because I felt like Cincinnati was going to fall apart. That still may happen, but right now we have a couple of, 40-point games for Jamar Chase on the year, so that's hard to get away from. The good news right now is if you are getting by the skin of your teeth, like frankly, I feel like my teams are doing, if you're getting by the skin of your teeth, that means you're a low advance rate team. So hopefully for the playoffs, you can expect some stuff. The bad news, you still have to survive 3 weeks of the playoffs there, or 2 weeks and heading into the finals as well. So that's sort of the tough part there. If you don't have your Saquons or Jamar Chases, your Barkley, your Saquons and your Barkleys, your Derrick Henrys, really the high advance rate guys there. If those guys go off in the playoffs, you're fucked. But hopefully, hopefully the low ownership will do some good things for us. Shouts to Chad, as always. Almost lost a fucking Rams kicker in my season-long league. Missed one. He made a lot of points. Josh Carty did yesterday. But when it's a field goal kicker defining a day, never the most fun one. Anyway, your top scorers on the year. Let's get into it. And if you have any your own lamentations about the year, either your redraft leagues or your best ball or your DFS, feel free to drop it in the chat. Lamar, your top scorer on the year, as I've mentioned enough times, I feel like every week I have to open these videos the exact same way. Lamar, the best floor in fantasy football, one of the better ceilings overall, puts up 32.9 this past week, another shootout game versus the Bengals. Bad news for him is he doesn't face the Bengals again, but still a lot of good matches for Lamar. That Baltimore defense, not good enough. You're getting it on both sides, where Lamar himself dropping back more, creating more production. The flip side of it as well is that Lamar himself is certainly able to play down in spots where he'll put himself in third and longs, and a little more than you want to see if you're a Ravens fan. But I would say in general, you're still probably getting situations where he'll dig himself into a hole. It actually happened that last week. There was one play where he lost 10 yards the play before, gained that 10 yards back, plus another 10 on a run play the next play. That's sort of what the Lamar experienced right now. The entire game is in his hands for Baltimore. So if you're heading into the playoffs with him, again, he is probably one of the chalkier players I would think advancing right now. But he's the only elite QB who really feels worth it, even though Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen coming on strong. Just what he's done for you this entire year, he's probably made your teams. And I know for me, definitely one of my higher advancing QBs. Baker Mayfield, kind of the flip side of that one. We did see the floor this week, 8.9 fantasy points for him in half-point PPR. So certainly for Baker Mayfield, bad days could be coming with some of the lack of really depth at wide receiver. They should get Mike Evans back after their bye, so hopefully that'll help him out a little bit. Bad news for Baker, you do get the bye week coming up this week, so that's something where you won't have any points for him to keep him at the number 2 spot overall. But second of all is that, the Bucs are a team that are kind of going the wrong way. Evans coming back from the hamstring, maybe gives him a little bit of a boost. Heading into the playoffs, though, are the Bucs still full go? I'm not sure. They seem to be competitive no matter what the matchup is. And Baker Mayfield, the one play against the Niners this past week, stiff arming the guy, like that was one you probably saw on social media. He's been doing stuff like that all year. So he's been playing the best version of Baker Mayfield ball. But at a certain point, I don't know if the results are there down the home stretch quite as much. So as where he's playing right now, where he got drafted at ADP, he's been one of the better picks relative to ADP for sure. But I don't know if he's going to get you the championship at the end. I think his advance rate's probably a little bit high. And he's definitely a player as well where I could see the bottom coming out maybe at some point here. Burrow number 3 has been very fun. Lament not getting a little more chase. Yeah, so Burrow here at number 3. Burrow playing well. Bengals playing for their lives. They are really digging uphill, though, trying to get into the playoffs right now. If they lose this week, it's definitely one where they're going to be completely fucked. And notice there. Are they not playing this week? Okay, so that might. So I guess they can't lose this week then, right? Or am I just selecting the wrong thing? No, they play the Chargers. My bad. Yeah, they play the Chargers in a defensively minded matchup. They could absolutely lose that game, even though being in LA, obviously not the biggest home field advantage. I was control F-ing the wrong area. That's why I couldn't find their game. For Joe Burrow, though, if they lose this game, I think they're done. You kind of have to worry about them calling off the dogs a little bit more. So for Burrow, Cincinnati's been kind of the I would say, toxic kind of situation. Not something seems off with them the entire year. Is basically what I thought would be coming in. But this is one thing that's kind of a lesson point for me. Burrow still playing out of his mind relative to that. So really the big hope, if you are not a Burrow person, he's not somebody I drafted a lot of. I also didn't get Jamar Chase as much of the field, though I do have him enough that I still have some lineups advancing with him. I was low on T. Higgins as well. I think you're just hoping for Cincinnati to kind of call off the dogs at some point here. And it's possible that happens over this next 4 to 5 week run, especially if they lose, 2 more games, 1 more game might be close. Baker feels like the biggest surprise of the year so far. Yeah, I would say so. The offensive coordinator stuff, I think, too. Liam Cohen, not a guy coming in with a lot of pedigree. Burrow trying to get his boys paid. I guess. I don't think you have to do any more at this point to get Jamar Chase paid. I just don't know what they're playing for, really. They still obviously think they could run the gauntlet here, get into the playoffs, whatever. I get that. I think one more loss, though, like you're really digging up on some math there. It's not going to be in favor of them trying to keep going. Jalen Hurts, 30.7 this past week. As I mentioned, since their bye week, they seem to figure things out. In the last 3 weeks in particular for Jalen Hurts have looked good. Tush Push looking better as well is always going to help him out too. Saquon having a bad day this past week, also going to help him out there. For Jalen Hurts, I think he's a little bit less valuable to your team right now than Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's going to be chalked, though, going into the playoffs. And I think him and A.J. Brown, that's an upside to win you tournaments. Him and Devontae Smith. If A.J. Brown were hurt, I think an upside to win you tournaments. If A.J. Brown's healthy, probably less so. But I'd say for Hurts and Saquon builds, those would look pretty good. Hurts with A.J. Brown, I think carrying that to the playoffs would give you a lot of potential upside because I imagine A.J. Brown's advance rate is not that great right now. So for Hurts, I think the upside is there from it. He probably hasn't paid off his ADP in terms of advance rate. Now you're looking at that right now. Derrick Henry, we're going to see it when we go to the BBM site in a moment. Derrick Henry, one of the most important advance rate players right now. So he's been playing well enough every week. This is sort of a down week for him at 13.6 half PPR points. We are getting Keaton Mitchell back in the mix. So that's something that could take a few touches away. This week, John Harbaugh said he thinks it's going to be like a 3-headed backfield, I believe was the exact quote, with Mitchell, Justice Hill, and Derrick Henry. Those are things that are not great for Henry, along with the fact that he just doesn't play in those third and longs, not that he ever really has, but he used to have a little more pass game work. So for Derrick Henry, I think you run a shot of being left holding the bag in the playoffs. He could advance you. I think really what's more likely with Derrick Henry, he advances people in 1 week, like week 15 or week 16. He gets to the finals or maybe the semifinals and kind of shits the bed, gives you a 12-point game or so. And that's sort of where people die on the vine. For Derrick Henry, I think he's still mostly good chalk, but like you're really fragile if he's the guy driving your success because he's going to be on 35, 40% of the advancing teams, it looks like right now. Josh Allen, 20-point game this week, receiving weapons down. He did run a little bit more as a result, which I think is a positive. Seeing him run more gives you more hope in him hitting a true ceiling that he's not hit very often this year as he's been passing more, especially in the red zone. That team is one of the higher pass rate expectation teams in the red zone overall. For Josh Allen, though, I think he's playing well enough. Again, don't feel like he pays off the elite price tag when you have Lamar doing what he's doing. I'd rather have Jalen Hurts and his stack partners at a single game. So I think heading into a tournament, you're really hoping that seeing the rushing upside more for Josh Allen is the big thing here. That said, Buffalo far enough ahead in the East. Probably, well, if they beat KC this week, that would be one where potentially they could maybe not have to play as much down the home stretch. Allen, if they're playing for a bye, they're going to be good, I think, to their home stretch. And I think if they beat KC, that's just going to make them more in the hunt to probably play and try to get that bye because they'll have a tiebreaker advantage over Kansas City. So I think Allen still has an upside here. I'm not confident in him being the guy like you need to win. I would rather make that bet on Jalen Hurts. I'd probably still rather make the bet on Lamar Jackson, even though his advance rate is going to be really high. For that, I feel like for Josh Allen, though, there's still a chance he could win you everything at the end. And that's really, I guess, all you're asking for ultimately. Jaden Daniels, 8.6 half PPR points. He barely ran against Pittsburgh. Had a few touchdowns that could have been caught. One in particular by Miami Brown, just literally in his hands, and he just fucking didn't catch it. Frustrating. It's also tough to see. Terry McLaurin gets the 100-yard day, doesn't get a TD with it. Jaden Daniels doesn't get the benefit of having a TD along with that. It's really tough for Washington. I talked about it in the VIP Discord earlier in the week. Of course, you can support the show and get access to that by joining down below. You also get my data sheet and a premium video every Friday, so please support the show. If you appreciate the nichest content like this one is, please do that. I don't think the upside is there for Washington as much as it should be, and it sucks. Like, they run the ball well. I think Tyler said this in the VIP Discord as well. Very efficient in the red zone. So as a result, you don't have Jaden rushing as much as he should. They don't pass over expectation in the red zone. They actually, run a lot more. They probably should in the red zone. Across the field, they run more too because they have such success running the ball. The zone kind of run play is working out a lot for them overall. Jaden himself, since he's had the rib injury, it feels like he's running less. So now you have a guy who's like doesn't have this real pass game ceiling because he's only targeting one guy for the most part. And you're not really having those outlier days for Noah Brown and Zach Ertz coming with it. You also have the run game taking touchdowns away. You have him not running enough. So I think the good news for him is that like his advance rate's going to be down. Like these 2 weeks here in the last month, 5.2, 8.6, do not help anybody. As the fucking president of the Jaden Daniels Exposure Club, doesn't help me out. Still think for the playoffs, you're still in the hunt. You get Philadelphia, you get Atlanta, you get good matchups in the playoffs. So I think the hope is you can get there with him. But like he is not driving success as much as he should be right now. And it's upsetting to get something so right, to get a player so right, and to get the real life part extremely right and the fantasy part mostly right. He's still a top 7 player, but like he's just not. He hasn't put up a 30-point game. He put up 60-point games fantasy-wise in college. Like I want to see something more here. We're just not getting it. It's fucking driving me nuts. It's going to be a theme every week. I'm going to get more and more radicalized against Jaden as we go. I got some fun teams are Sack Lamar, Henry Flowers. Yeah, those would feel pretty good. Tank Dell's a bring back, not bad either. Furry went in DK drafts. That's solid point total for regular season. For Jaden, are we talking about? I mean, look, for Jaden, there's nothing wrong with what he's been doing, really. It's just like you need something to move this and make it move forward. Let's see. Honest question. Love your videos and content, but are there any sites, free and or paid, you recommend that be good for battle royale contests or overall sports like NFL or NHL? I mean, Badge Bros would be the best one for that. They do all the sports for the most part. Anybody else out there? I know the Pound does some stuff. They do a good job, but battle royale content's a little bit hard because the people who are really good at it, I think, don't want to share their secrets, and their secrets are also not the most exciting. It's like random number generating guys off projections. So yeah, unfortunately I don't have a whole lot for you there. I would love to do more with it, but Underdog doesn't really pay me to promote that. So maybe something for next year to do more of. Jamar Chase at number 8 overall, kind of surprised he's not higher given the fact he's got this 49.9 point game, a 36.3 really at receiver. He's creating some distance for himself relative to everybody else though. Still behind enough players, including RB with Derrick Henry there. So kind of surprised me to see that. For Jamar Chase, though, the downside is still there. You saw him put up 8 fantasy points last week. That said, he puts up 50. That is, crushing teams and drafters, crushing teams and a lot of different sites out there. So he's going to advance at a high rate. We'll see that in a moment at BBM. He also worked really well where you could take him with Saquon. You could take him with Derrick Henry. You could take him with a lot of combos that I think have high advance rates too. And people did do that. The kind of drafters that like Chase did like those guys a little bit more as well, it seems. So like for Jamar Chase right now, he can have a bunch of duds, as Ross is pointing out here. He has had some duds. He can give you a dud in the playoffs. The Cincinnati can not play. He also has the most on the line probably of any player in football, where he probably has made the cases here. He could get at least as much as Jefferson, if not a little bit more, to kind of eke out and become the number 1 paid guy. You also have Garrett Wilson's deal coming up, and frankly, that might put some pressure on Chase to get even more money for himself too. Just how that works with guys in their competing contracts. Like, let's say Garrett Wilson matches Jefferson, then Chase has to exceed Jefferson. Is kind of thing you'd worry about. So for Jamar Chase, look, he's done everything he had to do this year. I still think going to the playoffs with him, he can go for 50 and he might just not play. And I think that's a lot of risk to bring on for the field that's going to be there. About 1/3 of their portfolio is going to be Jamar Chase and of the advancing portfolio. And that's something to keep in mind, that if you have it and that's what's driving you, it can hurt you pretty bad if you don't have things backing that up. And people at receiver this year won't have a lot backing up behind Jamar Chase because there aren't any good receivers. So it is kind of a tough spot. Really this year, without there being payouts for the regular season, it is hard to feel the most confident about like what you're doing rolling in. Like Justin Herzig tweeted it out, and I thought it was a good point. Like, do you like if you would want to have Derrick Henry, you want to have Saquon, whatever. I get that. Like they're going to advance the highest rates and all that. Same thing for Jamar Chase now. But do you really want them in a tournament format where everybody else is going to have them? I think probably not. So that's sort of where this is going to be a really unique year, and maybe something incredibly weird is going to happen for the winner. Shout out our guy Chunk here. Appreciate all the members being in tow, and of course Tyler and Liam Billings' portfolio around the Bills. Yeah, I mean, there we go. All right. We got Kyler Murray at number 9, Alvin Kamara at number 10. Kyler, honestly, the rushing touchdowns from him being good. He's also a guy, though, where you just saw him put up 5 fantasy points the week before. Think he's stabilized. I felt like he was looking a little bit better before we got that dud last week. Kind of felt like he had found his floor, found his footing a little bit more. As I've said enough times here, his biggest ceiling is going to be where he starts with the pass game work together with the run game stuff. This past week, he throws for a touchdown to Harrison, has 2 rushing touchdowns of his own. That's how you get to this kind of ceiling. In a perfect world, he throws 1 or 2 to Harrison, 1 or 2 to McBride. Maybe one of the backs can take one in the pass game, and then Kyler still gets you 1 on the ground, and that way you're getting enough production for the offense. Right now, the offense is kind of scattershot in terms of where the touchdowns are going. But I like Kyler. I think carrying Kyler in, I have a good amount of, I think, Kyler and Jaden teams that are floating around, potentially in the hunt to advance, and I think they feel pretty okay right now. Players that wanted more for their contract for the Cowboys aren't doing a good job improving their worth. Well, I mean, CeeDee Lamb, I don't know if you could blame him for this year. It just feels like they've been kind of cursed. And frankly, Dak was playing so poorly. So from the top down, it just isn't going well. But yeah, Dak getting big paid, CeeDee getting big paid. It didn't work out. And I don't know if it will. They need to overhaul everything on the offense. And then it still can work out for him. But you lose 1 year of those guys, under this big deal for sure. And Kyler, 3-0 since the Call of Duty release. There you go. So he's dispelling the rumors about himself, though he's too aware of it now, so that probably helps as well. Brock Purdy at number 11, Saquon number 12. Saquon coming down here with the 8-point game. I've said this all year. You have a floor with Saquon there. He's benefiting from a team that's creating a lot of yards before contact for him. He himself is not making as spectacular plays as it might seem, even though you do see him come up in the highlights. You can see one play, you won't see him fucking up a lot in between, and sometimes even missing really well-blocked holes. So for Saquon, when Jalen Hurts does well, it's always going to hurt him a little bit. The tush push in particular takes that production away from Saquon. I would rather have Derrick Henry personally, but I still think Saquon's probably going to give you one more spike week coming up. It's just a little shocking it wasn't against a really bad Dallas defense. Granted, Dallas played about as feistily as they've played this entire year so far, but 8 fantasy points in that spot is really not a lot to love for half-point PPR. Yeah, Barkley stuff, he falls down the 1-yard line. I mean, I'm glad that we're getting some regression back to the tush push, if nothing else. Bo Nix, one of the steals of the draft. Definitely one of my better successes, I think, in terms of evaluating him early on. Wish I just kept loading up on him instead of taking more of the Daniel Jones and Derek Carr tier, even though Carr might salvage on the home stretch. Jones might lose his job, so we'll see how that goes. But Bo Nix just steadily producing. The rushing upside was not something he had in college. He was just a really efficient passer who got the ball out fast. But he's the kind of player where I think when I see numbers like his in the future, where he's really efficient on every level, figures things out, I'm going to try to default to those guys just figuring out a way to be competent QBs, even if they're not world beaters. And he's not a world beater. No games over 25 fantasy points besides the one, 29.8, which was against Carolina, I think. So for Bo Nix, like just not great games, but good enough here, especially as a free QB, he's doing well for you. And frankly, down the home stretch, he could be out of Baker Mayfield and it would not shock me. For Bijan Robinson, good run for him. 27.9 half PPR points this past week. Bijan, I think, can end up being the top RB in that first round overall. He's probably the one you worry about the most if you're a Jamar Chase drafter because you're in the same range as him. They can have a team where it's like Bijan, maybe get some leverage on the higher-owned RBs that are going to be advancing at a higher clip, like Barkley and Derrick Henry. So I think Bijan team's very dangerous. They faced Washington in week 17. That's one of the potentially nut landing spots. So really for Bijan Robinson, nothing to complain about at this point, besides the fact that Tyler Algier probably takes a little bit too much off. Spencer, really trying to get this bid off. It's not ever going to work, Spencer, but I appreciate you trying to bid. Geno Smith, 15th, despite being on bye. So Geno hanging in there, gets DK Metcalf back. Obviously that's going to help him out long-term moving forward. Not going to be as good for JSN, but overall the stacks with Metcalf going to be a little bit better for Geno. And I think should have some spike weeks here because they really haven't spiked so far this year. QBs, on to this next. And guys, again, if you appreciate this content here, this is about the most niche content I do, but of course I bring the same process and really borderline obsession to everything I do here for NFL and of course NBA every day at 4 p.m. as well on the Splash Play NBA channel. So check those out. Subscribe, hit the like button, support our sponsors here. Unabated, $30 off the promo code SPLASH. Stochastic, 15% off, link in the description. Underdog, promo code SPLASH as well. And the Solver, you get nothing for it, but go click the link in the description and give me attribution on it. Smash the like, smash the wife. There we go. Best thing about the Bears firing their OC is the new play caller is the Panthers OC from 2023. So this is something that somebody like Adam, who's sometimes a fool, wouldn't recognize. As I say that now because Adam was joining the club who doesn't pay me sometimes. But no, like Thomas Brown actually salvaged the Panthers OC last year. Like he salvaged that team. Bryce Young threw for 300 yards in one of the games where Thomas Brown was entirely running the offense. So I mentioned this in the VIP Discord, which Adam would know again if he hadn't allowed his membership to lapse. But Thomas Brown, like go through from week 12 on last year, good games for Chuba Hubbard, good games for Bryce Young. Like he actually figured out that offense pretty well in the home stretch of last year, which is part of why there was some hope for me for Bryce Young coming into the year that I guess now we're seeing materialize. I certainly didn't early. So Thomas Brown, I think, is just going to make it come a little bit more simple. So that's basically it. At this point, I feel like for Thomas Brown, you're going to get good production out of him. But, you know, we'll see what happens in Chicago. I don't think it can get worse is really the main thing. Why would I want to pay you money? Because you're here every fucking day. And this isn't like, and you want to support the community that you really seem to be a part of. But follow your heart, Adam. Keep being the occasionally toxic person you are. Lamar Jackson at number 1. And I say this, somebody who's also occasionally toxic, but I hopefully do it entertainingly. Lamar Jackson at number 1. Baker Mayfield at number 2. Joe Burrow at number 3. We've talked about these guys. Jalen Hurts at number 4. Josh Allen at number 5. Again, we need to talk about these guys again. Jaden 6. QB's dominating the top overall scores. Not a surprise. Kyler at number 7. Brock Purdy at number 8. Bo Nix 9. Geno 10. Kirk Cousins at 11. Darnold 12. So these guys coming in behind. Darnold, you are seeing the floor this past week. How he couldn't get there against Jacksonville is really the biggest sign here. And shout out to Tyler for the membership. Tyler, always a hero here. That's why Tyler here. Adam, creeping down. And also, fuck Lad McConkey. 100 Gambler left me on hold, so I came here. Hey, we'll take that. You can't donate. You can't join a membership for 100 Gambler. I know that. So Darnold at this point, I think you're seeing why probably JJ McCarthy would have won the job at some point in the year. That said, Darnold did have plays where those could have been touchdowns to Justin Jefferson. It wasn't like a narrow, wasn't like a crazy big situation. Rather, it was a narrow situation where like he did fuck up where that didn't go. So I think for Darnold, there's going to be better weeks. It's tough to see the nut low come against the softest pass defense, but dead cat bounce, all of that. That's how it goes. Adam. Oh, wow. You got me, Adam. They're both playing similarly, honestly. But Adam, I think you could use a lap. I think Adam needs to remember where his place is, which is not paying member here, who is actually actively takes away from the channel sometimes. Trevor Lawrence at number 13. He might be out for the year. We'll see if he joins Dak Prescott on the quote-unquote unemployment line, the very well-paid unemployment line. Patrick Mahomes at number 14. Aaron Rodgers at number 15. Rodgers, you got to have some concern that at some point they pull the plug on the Jets thing entirely. The team is playing for nothing right now besides Rodgers' own ego, so we'll see how that goes. But that's that. And easy on Lad. I'm sorry to offend any other Lad bag holders, but Adam just makes everything so unlikable that I have to root against everything that touches him. Like even Brock Bowers, who I love, I think that's part of subconsciously why I didn't draft as much Brock Bowers, because Adam is just like the worst fucking person. Fine on stream the one time here, because of course people are. But in chat, just fucking drives me nuts. It doesn't really contribute to the community. Crazy. Where's Lad McConkey, the top players list? He is not there, unfortunately, for many people here. Look, Lad's played a lot better than I would have thought. The tough part is he ran into the buzzsaw. That's Quentin Johnston. So that's the trade-off here. When you're getting outplayed by Quentin Johnston, maybe that says enough. And frankly, there is a lesson there. We want to talk about overall best ball lessons. For me, next year, just not giving up on guys, Troy Franklin inclusive, guys who I liked in year one when they were coming out, heading into their rookie class, and then they get the shot year 2. Granted, it's not like the Xavier Hutchinson guys where it's like, oh, I think this guy's interesting. He doesn't get any draft capital. Oh, he's now playing a lot, and he's apparently not good. But more the tier of like Quentin Johnson came with draft capital, looked okay last year. I took him a little bit above the field, or I mean, honestly, it was probably about 2x the field, a little bit less than that. And then this year, I'm just like, fuck him, he sucks. And in reality, it's like, if you think the guy can make the leap, like not everybody's going to do it in year 1. Sometimes people do, and that's great. But I would say overall, like, I think that I, along with everybody in the industry, just throws people out, throws the baby out with the bathwater in that first year. And I think that's something where we have to be a little more mindful of not doing that. Don't want to go crazy on guys. Like I still wouldn't have wanted 16% Quentin Johnson, but I should have just fucking never taken him when he was going in the 180s, 190s, and he was still a legit guy. And it was frankly enough smoke there where Harbaugh talked about the big games that he put up against him in college. Like there were reasons to talk yourself into it. And I think industry wise, myself included, you do talk yourself out of stuff a little bit more. So you can't get exposure to everybody, but that's one thing I think to keep in mind is like the year 1 to year 2 guys making a leap has come in a little more into play than I think probably would have been how, it would have looked. Personally, it took me 12 years to become a functional producer in corporate America. Be patient with young receivers. Yeah, different game there. They don't have to politic quite as much. But yeah, I would say just the growth and not being spoiled by a bunch of rookies coming in. So even Lad McConkey, who I think we can all agree, just blind squirrel finding a nut sometimes. Heading into next year, like he's probably going to go too high, but like he's still a player that could make a big leap forward and become that aspirational Tank Dell Cooper Kupp hybrid. But hopefully he doesn't, because then it would make Adam happy. We got Derrick Henry number 1, Kamara number 2. We saw those guys in the top 10. Saquon just outside the top 10. Bijan talked about him. Jahmyr Gibbs, like people really talk about how like RB is so great this year. Jahmyr Gibbs was a first 1-2 turn pick, first second round pick, 11.8 fantasy points this past week. He's giving you 130 point game, and that's enough to make him top 5. I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs is actually helping out your teams that much. I don't know if he's helping out your teams more than the Harrison, Garrett. I mean, Garrett Wilson's played fairly well. Drake London's played fairly well, maybe a little bit less spiky than Garrett Wilson, but a little more reliable, I think, in terms of the downside. Like you've had guys that 1-2 turn that I think are just as good as Gibbs. They just don't have the 30-point game. So I don't know. I don't know what this really says, but I think people like talking about RB as just this plethora of great players this year. And in reality, it's like a plethora of okay players that, Jahmyr Gibbs was the difference between him and Chuba Hubbard. Kyron Williams was the difference between him and James Conner. Like it's not that big of a gap, really. The top 4 guys looking great. See how Kamara holds up down the home stretch. And we'll see if these spike weeks come for Henry and Barkley as well. But top 4 guys look great. Beyond that, at RB, it's really not as good as people think. It is a structure season in basketball. It was a contrarian structure year. Just take the RBs in the early rounds and just let yourself have shitty receivers late. Maybe besides one good guy up top. But I think that's basically the way it looks right now. The good news is that it still can flip heading into the playoffs. It's just hard to expect it because it does feel like we're kind of on a trend-based turn overall. Chuba Hubbard, though, 2 good weeks for him. Jonathan Brooks probably going to play the next time out, you would think. They are on a bye right now in week 11, so we'll see what happens in week 12. But giving Brooks the extra week does make sense, I suppose. Chuba, though, seems like he has to hold the role at bay, so he probably cedes 5 to 8 touches to Brooks. Hard to imagine more than that. And Carolina playing well enough down the home stretch, I think. Obviously, it was a soft match this past week against the Giants, or at least fairly soft. They've done okay against some decent teams that are better than Carolina. But I'd say for Chuba might still hang in there with at least like 15-ish fantasy points and give you an upside of 20. So I think Chuba not dead. I don't know if he finishes top 5 or anything. Probably gets closer to like 10 to 15. But I think Chuba has done his job for you this year. Chuba probably one of the better picks relative to ADP this year. Happy for QJ, but the way he's been scoring is so tilting. I mean, he's just getting like 1 bomb for a touchdown, which is sort of what he should be as a player. He's not commanding targets. I will say that. He's not earning targets at a high rate. James Cook, 15 points this past week. James Cook can give you some spike weeks, but again, much like Jahmyr Gibbs, he gave you 1 spike week, a couple pseudo spikes. That's basically it. So RB towards the bottom here of the top 10, really not as impressive overall. James Conner has the good week this week. Finally, feels like he's been due for a good one for a while. For James Conner, I see like the player sometimes does contribute to busted coverage though. Like the way he can run a route might make guys slow up and curl him instead of follow him downfield. So I wouldn't say that. I know the fantasy points data does support it, but I do think he's been fairly impressive. Like you still have to get open. It's still an important thing to get open. And frankly, Herbert too. Like Herbert running this past week, that's kind of what I felt like he could do. I've said this a few times. Want to see Herbert run more in general, and he just doesn't. That's not his play style. Maybe doesn't want to take the hits, given the fact he does sometimes get injured. But it's an interesting team. I think they could beat the Bengals this week, and I hope they do, so we can not have to worry about Jamar Chase in the playoffs. Joe Mixon, 16 fantasy points this week. One of the best workloads in football is the main thing for him. Houston, just not that good of a team. Played feistily against Denver, hung in there. But I think that for Joe Mixon, you really wanted the team to be better, but I think he's kind of benefiting from the team not being as explosive in the past games as they probably should have been. So we'll see what happens when Nico Collins comes back in. Nico going to finish some of those touchdown plays for sure. But Mixon, I think, just probably benefits from Nico. The fact that there are long plays that are moving the ball into the red zone. Like Mixon actually might have bigger spike weeks when Nico Collins comes in, even though it doesn't help. All right. I think so many fucking spam calls lately. I don't know why. David Montgomery, Breece Hall. I would rather have David Montgomery at ADP. Breece Hall, the one bad RB pick besides Travis Etienne in the first 5 rounds. I guess CMC as well at the 101. But CMC came back and did well. Breece Hall, we're now talking 3 straight weeks of 10-ish fantasy points. I don't know what happens to save his season. He's not efficient enough, as I mentioned enough times. He's not breaking the big runs quite as much. He also is a player where he is just not getting the goal line work. Like, that's really the main thing for me. He's getting around 20 touches a game, but he's not getting the 4-5-ish red zone touches you need to see for these guys to reliably get there. So I don't know what saves it for him. The Jets going the wrong way, I don't think is the thing. Maybe they could look at themselves and go, hey, we need to pass the RB more because everything else isn't working, I guess. But I don't think Rodgers is going to allow that either. So I don't see how this gets fixed for Breece Hall, but it's looking okay. David Montgomery, again, would rather have him than Jahmyr Gibbs relative to their ADPs. That said, you don't get the 30-point game from Montgomery, just steady, 11 to 20s. That's the case I made for him as 0 RB pick this entire year. I thought he was kind of the bell cow for your 0 RB build. And the fact that he just gives you 10 to 15 every week is pretty good on a year where there's not a lot of great stuff. Let's see. Love you, brother. That's all. Thanks for all you do. Thanks to you. I've got 3 drafters teams to the top 1,000. Wow, good for you, Trader Joe. That is a lot better than I'm doing on drafters. We'll see that in a moment here. So you get the slog of all the top players. But awesome to hear that, Trader Joe, and I hope it does well for you down the home stretch. The last few weeks, though, I will warn, like, a lot of movement in the last 4 weeks, which shouldn't be a surprise. People last year, I know, actually, I think might have been, was it ASAP Tuna? There was somebody who tweeted this week who was a top drafters finisher who pointed out, like, they were buried on one team and then got there with their good team. And then they had a good team that was like top 10 and then fell apart. So, like, not to say this to rain on your parade, but like the drafters sweat is just like such a weird sweat that I don't think you can see the ebbs and flows as clearly as you can, hopefully, or, should be able to see on an underdog. Achane, dog shit day as chalk yesterday, 7.7 half PPR points. The good news, he's iced Raheem Mostert entirely, or Raheem Mostert iced himself. That fumble last week, Mostert basically got no work this week as a result, which is fucking crazy. A little more Jalen Wright involved this week. Tyreek Hill, the pass game being a little more effective, hurts Achane a little bit. But Achane feels fine. I just think people want to crown him a top 5 back, and there's been nothing he's done this year besides the occasional spikes here that make you feel like a top 5 back. Just like a really bad run here. Granted, these are no Tua games, but the fact you can get under 10, it's just like you're not a guy you can trust every week. That's a tournament upside for the playoffs if you advance him in. He's really good leverage, I would guess, against Kyron, against Derrick Henry to some extent, against Saquon, possibly with where people are taking him in the second round. So he is a weapon against those guys when you get into the playoffs. Dobbins, Chase Brown, one of my better 0 RB picks that I've touted for a while. Hopefully continues to hold on the work there with Khalil Herbert fumbling. And now they're bringing in Gary Brightwell. They brought in Fournette, and Fournette must be completely dust because then they signed Gary Brightwell. So for Cincinnati, Chase Brown's work seems pretty safe. Probably does some risk, though, that the team just goes south and then he doesn't look quite as good. But frankly, if they pulled some receivers, I think they still keep Chase Brown out there and see what they have for him down the home stretch. So Chase Brown, I think, in pretty good position no matter what happens in Cincinnati. It could be better in some situations. J.K. Dobbins, a little bit hurt by having Gus Edwards back in. Gus looked like old Gus. Looked like, honestly, the best version of Gus we've seen. He was breaking 9-yard runs over and over and over again in that game. So for Gus Edwards, I think that hurts Dobbins a little bit. Potential loss of goal line work. Dobbins seemed like he's slowing down a little bit in some matchups, even though he had one of the better fantasy point games last week. It was kind of volume-based. So I'd worry a little about Dobbins if he's been carrying you. And he's probably been carrying a lot of 0 RB teams and, frankly, even early RB teams because of how well he's played. Chase Brown, my favorite stand of the season. Yeah, I wish I'd kept chasing him up a little bit more, but it's not the way I draft. I got so much of him in the 120s. I'm hoping some of those early teams have him somewhere good with something good. And Kyron fumbles and gets more work. Well, he should because his backup is Blake Corum. So what are you going to threaten him with then? At least for Miami, it's like, okay, we can go to Achane. We can go to Jalen Wright for anybody else here. For Audric Estime, if he fumbles now, I don't know if they go back to Javonte. But hey, Estime, though, he's certainly not in the top 15, but Estime now live down the home stretch. There's one other player that I could fucking use hitting. And Marshawn Lloyd, by the way, activated. So he's going to be going this week. And apparently Josh Jacobs is making him drive to practice with him every day. So Jacobs has taken Lloyd under his wing. So the Marshawn Lloyd backs, they're not dead yet. Give me one fucking usable game, Marshawn Lloyd, and I will victory lap it to the moon. That's my Davis Maddock Kansas City Chiefs is Marshawn Lloyd. Receivers, Chase Brown, number 1. Beautiful baby RBs are coming on for the playoffs. Might not be enough time, to be honest, but for the playoffs, hopefully we'll have some teams that are still alive and they can add some value. Jamar Chase, number 1. Jefferson, number 2. Jefferson honestly kind of shows here where just Jefferson's value in terms of a floor ceiling player. 7.3 fantasy points this week, still at number 2. He's not been helping you out tremendously at receiver. No games over 20 fantasy points besides in week 2. Would love to see him put up a game like this, but I don't know how it's going to happen in that Minnesota offense. So Aaron Jones missing time maybe would have given him a better shot, but Aaron Jones says he's going to play through whatever rib injury he has. So for Jefferson, I don't know how it gets better. I don't know. It's going to probably at some point he'll get like a 20s game. I think it's just got to happen at some point. And if anything, it might be coming up soon because of how bad this past game was. Like maybe they beat up on Tennessee. 6-point favorites, it looks like, on the road, though 39.5 total game is not very good. Maybe they just put up one more decent one. But for Jefferson, I think that there is still real concern that he just doesn't have the spike upside of Chase, and these guys were drafted right next to each other, and I made my stand on Jefferson. So if I advance Jefferson in, great. He'll be low in tournament stuff. He can outscore Jamar Chase if Jamar sits in the playoffs. But I just don't love how Jefferson's been playing this year. He's still good. It's just like the offense is not benefiting him. Thomas Brown called, I think, I looked it up this morning. Wright got fired after the first 11 games. So it'd be whatever, like week 12 on. Garrett Wilson at number 3, down week for him. Jets going the wrong way. He's playing for a contract extension coming up as well. He can keep having some games here. I think especially if they call off everybody else besides him because the Jets aren't playing for anything, but running some risk here of them just not being in competition, and Garrett Wilson, his future, again, contract coming up, might not get the results here down the home stretch, but he's been a lot better than I thought. Even the 3 games over 20 relative to this year, like he's been one of the better receivers. So I can't shit on him that much, even though I'm not mad having Drake London over him down the home stretch, I would say. Like that team's going to need to keep passing, and they're playing for a spot. Jets, who knows? Drake London, not great games lately. 13.7, 9.7, 5.4. Obviously, this one was with an injury too. For Drake London, though, offense is still good. Mooney's just a little bit more of a 1-to-1 for him than you'd want to see. Bijan also taking a ton of production off the table. Team doesn't pass as much as like the Rams kind of school of thought would lead you to believe that they would. But for Drake London, he's playing well enough. It's just kind of a chopped up offense. Upside is not reliably there. Would love to see more games like this. But again, keep in mind, that was a game where Cousins threw for 500 yards. So Cousins not throwing for that many yards that often. And frankly, Cousins kind of playing down in competition lately. Terry McLaurin looked a lot better on DraftKings with, I think, 19.8 fantasy points. And half-point PPR gets a 13.8, no 100-yard bonus either, so that's a little bit tough. McLaurin, though, 5th wide receiver overall. I'm not mad at him. The fact he's one of my highest exposed guys, he's probably helping me out. And frankly, his numbers, like, the early game's not that great, obviously, but his numbers don't look too far off from a Justin Jefferson. So that's the positive, I suppose. But for McLaurin, wish it were better. Feels like he's due a bigger game. He just doesn't put the games together where he's getting 100 yards, he's getting a touchdown, he's getting 2 touchdowns. He's not getting both together, and that's really tough to see. Mooney, probably the best wide receiver pick. In terms of advance rate, there's probably more, but he's definitely better relative to that. Terry made it to the end zone in 2 of those bombs where he felt the one he'd be wide receiver 2. Let that sink in. It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, look, Terry's so close every week. I can't not play Washington dominant lineups on the main slate because of the fact, like, I watched every player from Washington games, and like they are so close every fucking week to breaking these games wide open. It just doesn't hit. And maybe that's a skill thing, but McLaurin's playing well. It's just like they're legit should be probably, I think, 2 games where he's like 25-ish fantasy points this year, and he just isn't there. Terry being wide receiver 5 with only 2 games over 15 is kind of wild. It's just been a bad wide receiver year. And new Darnell Mooney, I'm glad you got the victory laugh. I don't recall this being one of your takes. I remember Kadarius Toney being one of your takes, Jaden. But I hope Darnell Mooney is prominently featured in your portfolio. But come on, man. You can't come in. I knew he was going to do it. That wasn't like you were Jaden, the Darnell Mooney guy. That wasn't how that went. But sure. CeeDee Lamb, better times are behind him at this point. Trey Lance starting would be a bad thing for him. Cooper Rush starting is clearly a bad thing for him. At a certain point, he might not play. I think CeeDee Lamb, we are going the wrong way, and he needs the sun blocked out so he can see the football. He couldn't see it. It wasn't his fault. That's basically it. All right, you got 35% Mooney. I see you in the chat. You didn't really mention him, so you're coming back in here. I feel like, Jaden, I haven't seen you for weeks. And you come back in like, that Darnell Mooney play I was here every day beating the drum of. But I get it. It's best ball. Everybody wants a victory lap shit. Darnell Mooney at number 8. Amon-Ra at number 7. I'd rather have Amon-Ra than CeeDee Lamb at this point, I think. Really feel like there should be better days for Detroit to come. Maybe this week coming up. I think they have Jacksonville this week. Yeah, they have Jacksonville at home as a 13-point favorite. So knowing Detroit's probably going to be a week where they throw a flea flicker to their backup long snapper just to have something fun. And then that guy's going to run 50 yards for a touchdown because that's how Detroit plays. But like in this spot against Jacksonville, Amon-Ra should go off. J-Mo should have a shot at going off. Like the game is competitive, especially on Jacksonville's side, which who knows. But Amon-Ra, think there are better weeks to come, and you're still playing for that Week 17 match against the Niners, where both teams, Detroit probably playing for a bye at that point, Niners in the hunt for a playoff spot. They're going to need to win every game down the home stretch. So that's where you're hoping you think you get the big upside for Week 17 with Amon-Ra. Darnell Mooney here, Jaden's favorite player. He's at number 8, playing well, getting downfield targets, basically gets the same work as Drake London, but at a higher ADOT. I feel like in crunch time, they go to Drake London more, but it doesn't really matter because Darnell Mooney's just getting better targets, and Cousins seems to just throw him better balls too. So kind of a combo of a lot of positive things here for that one. Jerry doubled down to the take with the Sun being a home field advantage. I did see that. McCarthy and should be implementing this in their game plan. Yeah, I mean, he was talking about the sun and the moon. He's just, if Jerry's ever been there, and I mean, she's been sharp at points, he is the furthest he's been from being there in a while. And like just a crotchety old man too. And he's still fucking creeping around with 20-year-olds. Like how do you have any self-respect? That's a judge women, especially in this 2024 world where you need to not judge women as much as possible. But like, man, fucking don't fuck Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is a fucking disaster in every possible way. Jaden Reed, bye week, still number 10 overall. He hasn't had a good week in like fucking a month and a half. Yes. Receiver is so bad this year. Jaden Reed has 123.6 game, and it's just like fucking that's it. I mean, he's got the 31 in week 1 as well. I shouldn't poo-poo that, but like for fucking this entire year, just one game over 20, and it's like, Jaden, just sit, man. You're good to go. That's all you need. His age spots are so hot. Jerry versus Biden and sand walking compensate. Do they struggle more in sand? I feel like that'd be softer on your limbs. I'd walk them on hard concrete and see who does better. Brian Thomas, awful game this past week. No Trevor Lawrence. Mac Jones is not the guy based on that one game. I would say to make him look better, maybe he can feed Evan Ingram some games. He did take a few shots, but yeah, I don't really see Brian Thomas keeping up. It sucks. Brian Thomas is unfortunately like one of the few good rookie picks this year, but he's cratering down the home stretch. Chris Godwin hanging in. This is so fucking dire for wide receiver. Chris Godwin's been out almost a month, and he's still number 12. Oh, God, it's awful. Malik Neighbors is going to pass him at some point, you would think. That's not good. Neighbors getting a ton of targets, I think can have some spike weeks down the stretch. He doesn't look like the same guy right now. He's not getting fed the same way. He also just looks like fucking mad every time he's on the field. The target volume's been there for Malik Neighbors, but man, this is awful. All right. Hard concrete's too easy. It does hurt your joints more as you get older. That's why people say to run on grass and not concrete. Johnny Wilson take. That's one victory lap this week. Oh, there you go. Sure. Let's not forget that Lazard is top 10 receiver before he went on IR. That's true. But man, I keep expecting it to get better. Like, because we do see some big games. Like MVS had 30 fantasy points. Like basically it. The concussion did not help him. And when he hit his head again this week, like I was worried he was going to be out again. But he hit his head pretty bad on one play, went to the blue tent, came back in. It's just like they don't go out of their way to feed him besides like for spurts. And it's like you just go out of your way to feed him every fucking time. And I don't think Drew Lock's going to be the answer either. I know people love the Drew Lock bit, but like he had a shot. Like in my mind, quarterbacks have a window in time, and players in general, where it's like you start getting playing time now. You get developed there. The team kind of invests in you. You go up. So like Geno Smith that year, that Drew Lock was a guy I was kind of caping for a little bit. Geno Smith was the one that got invested in, ends up getting the big contract. You know, he's in the system for a while before that as well. That helped out. But like that's when you have that shot to make it. And Geno, that's his second shot too because he failed on the Jets previously. Like I get that. It's a little bit different. The point being is like you just get these windows whenever they may come to be a great player. I think Drew Lock had his window and that window's gone and now he sucks again. So I don't really want Drew Lock out there. I also have enough Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones is still their best chance to win, but with his injury stuff, you don't want to guarantee him $24 million. So I get it, but I would just keep playing Daniel Jones. And I think if you do play Daniel Jones, you'll have a better shot at Neighbors getting there at some point. MVS might crack the top 12. One more good game and MVS will be there. Must be difficult for the rookie wide receiver studs to go from college to a shitty NFL team with a shitty NFL quarterback. The thing to remember, though, is a shitty NFL quarterback is better than every possible college quarterback. It's like you don't get to the pros unless you're the best of the best. So that's sort of the trade-off there. When you factor in the larger Eagles take that Hurts is winning MVP by throwing all over the place this year, that has not gone well. Yeah, he's not throwing all over for sure, but he's getting there down the home stretch. I mean, for fantasy, I think he's right where he wanted to be. Bye this week for Seattle. Don't expect JSN to keep his role coming out of it. That said, DK Metcalf, Maybe there were trade rumors about him. Maybe this was a shift overall to get JSN more work and maybe shift the offense away from Metcalf a little bit more and just does kind of prayer balls for a sacrificial X receiver who's really good at them, but that's not really the best route tree. So it's possible that for JSN, this was maybe a turning point. I'm not sure I'd buy it. Harrison puts up 13.9, had a touchdown this one, I believe. The workload's just not high enough for him. They don't run him on enough crossing routes. Really a lot of issues for him, I think. He could spike down the home stretch, but I wouldn't place my life on it. That said, the Harrison Puka week 17 combo, if you could somehow advance it, I was still looking lively here. Daniel Jones, not better than Daniels. No, I would agree with that. I think he's still better than Drew Lock, though. Is Lamar an obvious MVP? Ravens aren't winning enough, I don't think, but he should look the best. I think that Jaden's, honestly, if Jaden had won that last game, I'd feel really good about his campaign mounting a little bit. But it's probably Lamar. Jaden still has a shot, though, I think. If they were like to win out, they'd have to make the playoffs. They'd have to win the East, I think. They might have to get the bye. But honestly, the Ravens aren't going to get the bye either. So, yeah, I think Lamar in the hunt. I think Jaden in the hunt. I think Josh Allen very much in the hunt if they beat the Chiefs this week. If they get that bye, they're in the hunt. Mahomes, I would say, still in the hunt, even though he shouldn't be because he's played like shit. But the team wins a lot. So, probably the main guys. And that's me not looking at any odds markets just off the top of my head. Tight ends here. George Kittle's still doing well. 13.2 half PPR points this week. It's not going to get any worse for him. Losing Ayuk was really huge for him. Brock Bowers gets the bye. Again, even though Adams may be rude against Brock Bowers a little bit. No, not really. I still love Brock Bowers. For Bowers, I don't think he gets to 1. I think he hangs top 5 no matter what. McBride could get better. He's been great this year, though. I think the issue for me is really like, are they smart enough for this new, offensive coordinator coming in? Are you going to really like get creative in building the offense around Bowers? Like, because at this point, Bowers, with what this offense is, you're looking at 7 targets, Jacoby Myers, 10 to 15 Brock Bowers is probably what it should be. So this is assuming that the new offensive coordinator is good, though, which is where I would have concern because Antonio Pierce has shown no quality judgment at any point besides maybe just motivating the team well last year. And even that's not really quality judgment. For Bowers, I worry this go either way. I hope it goes well for him, but they like Jacoby Myers too much. And it's like, Jacoby Myers is fine. He's a fine number 2 receiver, but like, you don't need to feed him at the cost of Brock Bowers. Like, they just need to invest and give him a ton of targets. And I'm not sold that'll be the case, but you have a shot that could be the case. And it can't be worse. That's true. Can't be worse for Chicago. Can't be worse for Vegas right now. Trey McBride, 9 fantasy points here. Again, needs touchdowns a little bit more, but still playing well enough for an elite tight end. You're getting what you paid for, I think, relative to this year. So I'm not mad. Trey McBride is one of my highest exposed players. Cade Otton, 6 fantasy points this week. Came back down to earth. Bit of a surprise. You're kind of seeing what happens, though, when you put up multiple good games and there are no good receivers around you. You're facing a good team like the Niners as well. Cade Otton getting Mike Evans back probably helps him out a little bit because Cade Otton then kind of can absorb the former Chris Godwin role a little bit more. Don't know that we get back to this peak of 24.6, but he could put up 15 and 20 and it wouldn't shock me. So I think Cade Otton's still holding in pretty well. Kelsey, good game at 16.4 fantasy points. Not mad at that. Kyle Pitts, 7.5 here. Pitts needs to spike for you a little bit more. He can spike randomly, but the role is not, it's really Mooney or bust. It's Mooney or Bijan on that offense. Everything else is kind of, it's going to hit sometimes, but it's not really a reliable upside there. Tucker Kraft felt like it's always been flimsy. You're now getting Musgrave back as well after the bye, so that could hurt Kraft a little bit. No, he still probably keeps the main role there, but I don't think it helps him to have another tight end. They still have some draft capital investment and a higher draft capital investment in than him technically. Is Musgrave, of course. Mark Andrews, 15.8 this week. Quietly a good game. Felt like it wasn't the most necessary good game in the world in terms of fantasy. That said, you're now talking about this run here of 4 out of 5 weeks over 12 fantasy points. Most of them closer to 15. So Andrews has been fixed. He's just not as good as he was in the past, and people have a hard time coping with that. Hunter Henry, people loved him this week. He puts up 1.9 fantasy points. Trust nothing in a shitty offense to be the main lesson there. Henry's been good enough, though, for where he got drafted. Top 10 tight end. Can't be mad at it. Sam Laporta puts up 14 this past week. I think there should be better weeks for him. The issue is like when JMO gets going a little bit more, when the run game gets going a little bit more, Laporta's not going to get there. But it feels like they're focused on the home stretch. If they want to be a team that's going to win the championship, and I think they're very acutely aware of that process of trying to get there, get Laporta going a little bit more. You need to get down the home stretch. You need to get Amon-Ra kind of showing the ceiling. You get away with not doing that. But I think you need to get Laporta and JMO feeling really good heading into the playoffs. So Laporta putting up some more good games on the home stretch, I think, just getting force-fed some touchdowns a little bit more, I think would not be a crazy thing. Cole Kmet, probably benefits a little bit from Thomas Brown coming in as OC. I don't know how much, but just having a more functional offense will help him out. Not getting played off the field, just really 3 and outs over and over again for Chicago would be helpful. So Cole Kmet, maybe better weeks coming, but you need the 20-point games from him, really. Gesicki, if Chase goes off, it's not going to help Gesicki. Also, Tanner Hudson going off didn't help him out. Hudson being out is a little bit tough because Hudson can block and run Gesicki routes. Eric All could block and run routes, but not really Gesicki routes. For Gesicki, he might get a little more hurt by Tanner Hudson's success than people might realize. Kincaid, knee injury. Hopefully he'll be okay. I don't know if it's said anybody. I haven't seen anything about it being serious, but Kincaid, 3.4 fantasy points. The worst of the elite tight ends, I think, at this point. Zach Ertz hanging in there. Fucking get him out for Ben Sinnott. Snap's been down for him. John Bates, Sinnott taking enough work out there, but Ertz really the only one getting targets. Freiermuth, 9 fantasy points, likely out this week. Tight end is a dog shit position, and we know that. Biggest bust relative to, I feel like, how enthusiastic people were. Jake Ferguson. I feel like this is now probably dead for him. Maybe if CeeDee Lamb pulls out before he does, Ferguson can get some spikes with Cooper Rush would be your hope, but like the offense is going to be bad. That's basically the main concern there. And Njoku, I think, makes a run at this point. He missed 3 games. He's played pretty well. Jameis is the QB. I think Njoku probably gets up to top 10 sooner than later. All right, time to go to the part that's the least fun part of me. We get to look at my exposures. Of course, I'm going to enjoy this part because it's fucking been an awful journey, guys. So if you appreciate this content and me be willing to expose myself here, not taking my shirt off, but metaphorically do it with my BBM exposures, please subscribe down below. Please hit the like button. Please leave a comment. Of course, your engagements go a long way for me. A sole proprietor here just shows you my gambling and my football takes every day. And, before we do BBM DB, let's go to the big board first because big board's doing okay for me. Advancing 33% on the big board. A lot in third place, though, so I'm not sure this is going to go down the home stretch. But I would like to have a good big board finish. And I think we've got a shot to do it. This is one where I got sniped pretty aggressively on stream, as you can tell by the title. Hanging in on first place with a Dak Prescott team. I should have known the team before I clicked it. Herbert, Drake May, those guys are still fine. Najee, Mostert, Chuba, McLaughlin, Gibson, Dobbins, Izzy, Abanikanda. Oh boy, big board times. CeeDee Lamb, Drake London, Evans, McLaurin, Jaden Reed, Dotson. We got a team. This is still a live team. I thought that'd be more fun. This one has been my best one the entire year. So obviously, I'm sure it'll fail miserably when it gets to the playoffs. Stroud, Baker, Kamara, Pollard, Zamir White, Brian Robinson Jr. need to get him back in really bad. Him being out for 2 weeks has not been helpful for my portfolio. Jerome Ford, hopefully we'll get some useful games out of him with Chubb not taking a full workload. Charbonnet, Bigsby, Amon-Ra, Nico, Evans, Kupp, Ridley, Leggett, Brown, Jonnu, Johnson, Gesicki. So we're doing okay in the big board's the main thing here. Advancing more to third place, losing a few that were in second and first. So I'm kind of hovering around there. We'll see how the big board goes. But honestly, for me, winning BBM, obviously priority number 1. Like I want to win the most money possible, get the most recognition for myself. Winning the big board, though, for this show, where I'm the only person in the world that does content in January and February about the big board really aggressively, and I've had great rookie takes for a few years, probably be pretty beneficial, too, for the channel. So winning the big board, we're not out on. My Badge Bros Brawl, we'll look at that. Still number 1 here. My Badge Bros Brawl team, benefiting from all the players I don't like. Saquon helping us out a lot. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson are both here, but Chase obviously helping out a lot. Team has got Hurts and AR maybe coming back at some point, we would hope. Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, Swift, Brian Robinson Jr., Singletary, all my RBs still alive. And Swift, I would say, going to do a little bit better on a Thomas Brown as well. Jefferson, Chase, Debo, Devontae Smith, Tank Dell, Pittman out now, Reed. Receivers still all alive, and Pittman fucking cares. Brock Bowers and Njoku, Goddard, tight end still alive. So my Badge Bros team is like the most live thing. And if you think I will not come on here and brag about being the Badge Bros Brawl champion every day, if it wins me $50K, you are sadly mistaken. Besides that, I don't really care about these other tournaments that much, but some are advancing, some are not. All right, over to BBM next. 35% Andrews. Oh boy, that's a lot. That's a lot. All right. My exposures. So we are at still under average. Unfortunately, moved up a little bit more though. 18 out of 150, so a 12% average. It's not looking good right now. Best teams are all very early though. So I did press my early advantage in some of these. This one late April 29th with Kyler, Jaden, and Bo Nix. All my QBs still alive. Mixon, James Conner, Brian Robinson Jr., Chuba, Bucky Irving, Kamani Vidal. Vidal not looking good right now, but all those guys still alive. Harrison, London, Keenan Allen, McLaurin, Sutton, Franklin. Franklin's giving me points. And Mims. Mims got some routes this week. And Laporta and Sinnott. So I'm not mad about this team. Top 26,000. Probably one of my best teams overall. And that was me getting it pretty early at the end of, was that the end of May or was that? That's the one at the end of April. Wow. So that's like first week it's open. Yes, Gus is back, which will help out this team, which got 5.9 points from him. Lamar and AR, that's tough capital to have on AR right now. But Bryce Young giving me at least 2 QBs. Kyron, Connor, Gus Edwards, Marshawn Lloyd, Ray Davis. You can see why this team is barely scraping along. That said, hopefully can hit its stride down the home stretch. Chase carrying us. Neighbors has helped out. Keon Coleman, Deontay falling apart here. Sutton stepping up. A.D. Mitchell stepping up. Thielen probably done for the year. K. Dotton doing okay. Jatavian Sanders stepping up. Likely out right now. Those are 2 of the top teams I have. Another one drafted very early here, April 30th. Jaden, Levis, Daniel Jones. Hopefully these guys all contribute, given that Jaden's not been that good. Kyron, James Conner. That's funny. I actually didn't realize that. Mims got more carries than Javonte. I mean, Javonte got no work. He's basically iced now for Estime. So it is an Estime world we are living in. Thank God. Jalen Warren, Chase Brown, Jerome Ford, Lloyd. Jamar Chase again pushing this one. Neighbors, Flowers, McLaurin, Ridley, Hopkins. These guys all looking pretty good here. And tight end looking bad. Sinnott and Chig. But again, I feel like I'm not happy with my advance rate, to be totally clear. Like I would love to advance 50% and feel really good about it. I don't think no matter what happened this year, that was ever going to be a possibility because I wasn't going to take basically punt receiver entirely, take a bunch of RBs early and then live off Quentin Johnson and that shit. So from this spot for me right now, I don't feel bad about my exposures. I don't feel bad about my teams. I think at this point, it's just like, can I survive through the playoffs to get something unique? So for me, I'm happy with where we are. I still think we have guys. Adam talked about Ben Sinnott. His price got crazy. It did, but that was also the assumption that Ertz would not be as prominently involved as he was. I still think it was a good bet if Ertz were just kind of placeholder. The issue is like he's been the tight end one and the clearly defined one. And frankly, John Bates also being tight end two because he's a good blocker is not helping Sinnott out there. Sinnott just needs to be out there running routes because then the routes will turn into targets. That can happen down the home stretch. So like the bets on him and Marshawn Lloyd have not been good so far, obviously, but I don't think they're dead yet. So those are the guys who are like, that's my ace in the hole. If someone's going to drive me late, it's 2 guys who have not done anything. It would be Marshawn Lloyd and Ben Sinnott. And Wounded Geese in 16th on Drafters. Good for you, Wounded Geese. Glad to hear it. Other teams up top here, I'll just look real fast. Kyler and Bo Nix, that feels okay. Mixon, Jalen Warren coming on a little bit stronger. Ford, Dowdle, Bucky, Justice Hill. This team is surviving. This team is surviving. Jamar Chase helps out. We get Nico back, thank God. Mike Evans, Zay Flowers, Cortland Sutton. Back half here with Wilson, Whittington, Josh Reynolds, pretty useless. McBride and Freiermuth, not bad, though. So anyway, I'm loaded for tournament-style teams here. It's really the main thing for me. I don't feel bad about it. And for what it's worth, again, getting Jaden, quote-unquote, right, top 7 player on the year, 17.4% advance rate. It's really not worth a ton for me. He and McLaurin, I presume these are all probably he and McLaurin. Yeah, 7 advancing of that combo. Are we advancing any combos with Atlanta? Oh, advancing 3 with Drake London. So the hope is really for a shootout with Atlanta where Drake London benefits. Mooney, the better receiver. Higher advance rate receiver, though, is Mooney. Advancing 1 Mooney. Advancing no Pitts. So I'll be exposed. Any Bijan? Hey, advancing 1 Bijan. All right. So we can have Washington, Atlanta going live. That's all I ever want. But that's basically it for me. One thing I will look at all the streamers as well, but I do want to show you guys something I thought was interesting. So advancce rates right now, Saquon Barkley. So we're talking about the chalk here is going to carry through the playoffs. Saquon, a 36% advance rate. And then I don't know what data this is. I would kind of throw it out, but they're expecting it to advance 38% of the time. So Saquon Barkley advancing a lot. Derrick Henry right now looking like he's off the chalk. 47%. If you had Derrick Henry, you had a coin toss chance of advancing right now. So Derrick Henry advancing a lot of these teams. They're all going to be chalk coming together. Jamar Chase, 45% advancing. He's the only receiver who's spiked meaningfully. So put all these guys together. Not a lot of teams, but you had a 95% chance of advancing if you had these 3 guys together. These guys are the chalk. These guys are unequivocally the chalk here. So anything you are getting in that does not involve these guys at all is going to make you feel better. If you are advancing these guys with really good depth behind them, let's say you have Saquon, and then behind them you have Chase Brown, Bucky Irving / Rashad White, really either at this point. You have Dobbins, maybe. Like, you have good stuff behind him. That's your hope, because you just need to beat out. These guys are the enemy. Like, I know it sucks because a lot of you guys, I'm sure, that are advancing are like, I'm so proud of my advance rate. I got Chase. I got my RBs right. In reality, you are the fucking enemy in tournaments, because, like, you got these players doing well, don't help out anybody really. These players doing poorly help a lot of unique teams advance, and getting into the finals especially could be really important. So I certainly hope Nico does as well. Nico, what's his advance rate at? Assume it's still probably pretty good, but would have been better if he'd been playing the last month. It's still an average advance rate for him, so he'd probably be like 25 to, well, he might be like 40%. Yeah, Henry and Lamar. Actually, what's Lamar? Just out of curiosity. Lamar's got to be the highest QB advance rate. Yeah, Lamar, 36%. Jesus. How many Lamar Henry teams are out there? It's only 5,000 and only 4,000 advancing right now, but still 72% advance rate if you had Henry and Lamar. Look, there's very obvious chalk right now. When you're trying to win $1.5 million, you don't want to be the obvious chalk. And frankly, the system just changed so much this year. We're like not getting paid out with the regular season prizes. I really don't think you want to be a top team right now, even though you want to be a top team always. Like, you don't really want to be a top team. And it sucks. Like, our guy Mathology is a top team right now, but it's going to be tough for him to dig out. All right, other people here. He might not even be playing week 17 would be the concern. All right, so Pat Carrain surging a little bit. Drake May being useful probably helps him out. 12 out of 150. His best lineup came in mid-August. Burrow, Bryce Young, Drake May, Achane, Chase Brown, Dowdle, Zeke, Dobbins. This team's still live at RB. Chase Evans coming back in. Higgins coming back at some point, you would think. Deontay Johnson, role's gotten worse. Keon Coleman out a few weeks. Leggett coming on okay. Pop Douglas hanging in there. Andrews, Otten, Gesicki. Again, people in the first few weeks here, really the first like 2 months, people I saw on Twitter like, oh, Pat Carade, maybe we shouldn't be listening to him. He's whatever. And like, this is what happens. Your teams start to surge late. He's only at 8%. You're only expected to advance to 5%. But like, I bet his bullets that do advance will have some real potential. Davis Maddock does a good job on his stream. I'm probably one of my favorite content creators right now. I have to give Davis a lot of credit. His channel's very entertaining. Does a lot of good job getting smart people on talking about data. Does a lot of guest booking though, which I don't fucking, I don't want to do. 9% advance rate for Davis right now. His top lineup. And again, it's not the goal is not to dunk on people. It's just to show these other people who are key parts of the community how they're doing right now. So you can relate and you can get it at home. So just for the record here, Joe Burrow and Justin Fields. The Fields part feels a little bit tough now. Devon Achane, Tony Pollard, Zach Moss, Trey Benson, Dobbins. Really probably looking for a Connor injury to make this one salvageable. Chase, Ayuk, ooh, that's tough. I have a couple teams that have Ayuk and Rice together and it doesn't feel good. And I have a lot less Rice, so it hurts me even more. Rice, Ayuk, Jaden Reed, Brian Thomas going down. Josh Downs hanging in. Yoshivas Hyatt finally got some work with Slayton concussed. Roman Wilson. Not a favorite team ever, but still not bad. Our pal Pete. Pete at 14%. His best team drafted late August. With Lamar, Trevor Lawrence, Najee Harris, Chase Brown, Zach Moss, Khalil McLaughlin, Charbonnet, and Mason. So going to lose those scores heading down the home stretch a little bit tough, but Najee, Chase, and McLaughlin maybe can carry some weight, at least the top two. Jefferson, Nico, Devontae, Zay Flowers, Kirk, Downs, Malik Washington, Bowers, Conklin, and Colby Parkinson. Parkinson looking dead, by the way. Davis Allen, so we talked about on the stream yesterday. I thought Davis Allen had lapped him. Turns out Davis Allen really lapped him. So good for the big board teams, bad for any Parkinson shares you got out there. Who else we have to look at? Eric Beimfor was one of the leaders before. Oh, you want to see the ebbs and flows, by the way. Beimfor was advancing double this a couple weeks ago. Now he's down to 17%. And no slight on him. It's just what happens when Mason goes down a lot of guys. His top team, Jaden and Brock Purdy, Mixon, Aaron Jones, Kendre Miller, Chuba Hubbard, Ray Davis, Bucky Irving, Eli Mitchell. That's tough. Drake London, Adams, Zay Flowers, Higgins, J-Mo, Yoshivas, Tez Walker. Fucking preach. Too much Tez Walker for everybody. George Kittle, Brock Bowers, elite tight end. Certainly a fun tournament team, but that's ebbs and flows for you. King Coakley, Rob Coakley over on Spike Week 2. He's still at 24%. Rob crushing. 4 QBs, Kyler, Fields, Watson, Jones. Tough to be losing 2, maybe 3 of them, but it's worked for him. Williams, Pollard, Benson, Chase Brown, Bucky. Not a bad RB room. Benson could stand to do some more. Chase, Nico, McLaurin, Thomas, Wicks, Polk, McCaffrey. Good top 3. The rest of that has some issues. McBride and Freiermuth, the tight end, feels pretty good. Who else? Neil Orfield at 15% and one in the top 1,000. Burrow and Mayfield, Najee, Javonte, Jerome Ford, Bucky, Chuba, CEH. Chuba probably has a pretty high advance rate if I had to guess. Jamar Chase, Neighbors, Devontae, Pickens, Godwin, Wicks, Burton, Reynolds, Kelsey Otten. That's a fun team, though. It's a fun team. What's Chuba's advance rate? 34%. Oh, man. Chuba chalky, too. Wow. I don't recall, and this could still move around the last few weeks, the last few years of doing this, and obviously, I've been doing this, like maxing out BBM as my 3rd straight year doing it. And then I still paid attention the year before that because I was doing streams with Pete. This is the most concentrated chalk like ever in an advance rate. Like I can't recall, because remember like one year it was like, oh, Justin Jefferson's 35%. And last year, I think Tyreek was like 33%. Like those are the big ones. You have like 4 or 5 players above 30% right now. And that can fall the last 4 weeks, but like, or, last, I guess, 11, 12, 13, last 4 weeks of the regular season. Right now though, like it's pretty clearly defined who you don't want to have carrying you and heading into the spot. So like it's Chuba, it's Saquon, it's Derrick Henry, it's Chase, it's Lamar. Those guys are all 5 guys. That's like that's almost 1/4 of, or I guess more than 1/4 of the roster that is kind of what the core roster is. A lot of people are going to be carrying into the playoffs. So that's sort of crazy to know that because it's not often the case. Anybody else? I know people like to see Fantasy Flock. Yeah, of course he's crushing this year, 24% advance rate. When RBs will crush, Fantasy Flock will be there. And here's the team. I'm not going to read it. How's Liam doing? Just Liam, the most tweeting. Back up to 15% for him. Totally respectable. Shouldn't be getting dunked on as much. People seem to love doing for him on social media. I get he does puff his chest out, but like people are really fucking obsessed with Liam on Twitter, it seems like. Burrow, Purdy, ATN, and not in a good way for the record. Like if you love them, more power to you. But people are like, fucking hate this guy. Like I don't think they should. Because he says his takes confidently. Cook, Rashad White, Kamara, Swift, fun RB room besides ATN. Chase, Debo, Evans, Judy, Josh Downs, Yoshivas, McCaffrey, Tucker, Khalif Raymond. Man, it's just not good receiver rooms are carrying people through, but obviously that's the year. Cole Kmet, Isaiah Likely, tough at tight end as well. Hey, there you go. What else? Drafters. Quick look at drafters. Again, the last couple weeks of drafters will be the main thing here. Went down this week on drafters. My top team right now is a Lamar team. Lamar and Kirk with Kyron. He's a bit delusional, but most people who do this are. Okay. Is that an underhanded dig? I guess. I mean, he won BBM. Like I think the issue is really like if you present like, and I think like Kareem, to his credit, I don't think ever presented as such. And Fareed Shaheed last year either. Like the issue is when you present it as though like you winning BBM is like I'm the best at this thing. It means that you're one of a lot of very good people at this thing, but also it means that you got incredibly lucky and like whatever. Because like what it takes to win down the home stretch. Like for Kareem, I think is one of the sharpest guys who's been in this industry since the entire time I paid attention to it. Like even before I was in it, like when I've been reading shit back in the day when I would play fantasy football on my own. Like Kareem's one of the smartest guys to do this. So like for him to not ever acknowledge and say like I'm the best player at this in the world, like I think sort of speaks to like what it is. So I think that's the tough part, but I don't think he's delusional. Superiority complex, I guess. I don't know. Like I talk down to people too. I think it's just more like if you feel like you're putting the work in and you feel like other people maybe aren't, like you deserve to kind of come off a little bit like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. Maybe you don't. But like it is sort of all about the approach and all that. And certainly I could be too mercurial, as Adam could attest better than anybody. I could be too mercurial, but also like if you're gonna give me a take, and to Adam's credit, even though he may drive me nuts sometimes, like he always comes in where he's done his research, knows his shit. People come in and they're like, man, like, I don't know. Kobe Parkins is a lot better player than Davis Allen as an example. And it's like, well, he just played less snaps than Davis Allen. So what? And like, don't say that part confidently unless you're going to come in with some sort of work. So I think you sort of have to have like a little bit of a superiority thing if you're doing this kind of content and you're doing the work and you're doing the work. If you're not doing the work and you're just saying shit, that's where I think there's a little more of an issue. But I didn't mean to come on here to defend Liam. Like Liam's fine. I have no problem with him. But I do think people are like really, for whatever reason, he gets like the most acid from people. I've given you compliments before. You just fucking don't pay for the channel. That's the main thing. Audrey Estime, 5.3 fantasy points. See, pay for the channel, Adam. You'll get more compliments. Estime made a roster for me, which is not a good thing, I would say. With 5.3 fantasy points, he got some targets. There's hope for Estime, even though Bo Nix takes a lot off the table. Jamar Chase, 55 fantasy points, had to drive a ton of the teams overall. Drake London, okay. Hurts, Saquon team's looking good. We didn't look at the advance rate. Oh, I didn't even switch over to drafters real fast just because this guy's bringing it up. What's Hurts? Yeah, I realize that now. Hurts' advance rate is at 35. Wow. This is for Liam. Never mind. Like, wow, it's at 35%. All right, so Hurts' advance rate. All right, 23. That's not crazy chalk yet. Hurts with Saquon. 42%. Nope. Not, I know. This actually looks like the stack you don't want now. Which I think you'd want Brown more. I bet it's advancing less. Again, it's like a really tough balance, and I think it's important to talk about this. Like, so if Hurts and Saquon's advancing, 43% of those are advancing, you don't really want to be there as much. Now, the pure volume of it might be different, right? There's 60, 100-ish entries of Hurts and A.J. Brown. All right, so there's still half the entries of Hurts and Barkley, so never mind. But it's still going to be pretty chalky in the next round, which is sort of the main thing here. Like, you're basically putting in chalk plays when you're building a DFS lineup, so you need to have unique stuff around it. What do we know from the Sims? Like, you can play chalk, but you better have unique stuff around it. So same thing for any of these high advance rate guys. I encourage you all to play with BBM DB a little bit more and look at that. Anyway, my drafters team that I was looking at here and did switch the screen, Chase advancing, or putting up a lot of points here to help move the lineup up and advance the lineup forward. Darnell Mooney doing okay. Shakir doing okay. Zay Flowers should be better. The team isn't dead or anything, but like having low RB points at this point, being contrarian on drafters is nothing for you. On drafters, I would want all the Saquon. I'd want all the Derrick Henry. I'd want all the Jalen Hurts, all the Lamar, because those guys are it. Like, those are the guys are the ones that really are going to carry you through. And you hope maybe something unique can spike you in week 17. But for how it is right now, like these teams, I don't know. I have no pathway to first I see on drafters, to be honest, at this point. So I care less about it as we go on. No respect to drafters. I enjoy the drafts on drafters, but the sweat is not fun. And like, you're kind of dead on a drafter slate a little bit earlier than you are in an underdog slate, because it's just about, can I scrape by? Can I get a team in a BBM or any of the tournaments on underdog? For drafters, it's like, cool, you didn't have the top scorers on the year. You don't have all those guys up top. You don't have Baker, Lamar, Henry, whatever. You're just like, you're not going to get there. So I think for drafters, I'm probably not going to pay a ton of attention down the home stretch. Team 31's dead now because of no Lazard. That's true. And it is actually better to not have the high scoring guys. I don't know if you're being sarcastic, but I would say for drafters, it is not. For BBM, it is, which is stupid, but that is how that goes. Anyway, this team here in number 2, the one I drafted with Robert Griffin the turd, we have Jaden Daniels giving us 8.6 fantasy points this week. That's not good. This team has CeeDee Lamb. That's right. CeeDee Lamb and Olave both maybe trending towards being out for the year. Olave, I would say definitely out for the year. Devontae Smith can have some good weeks, but is it going to get this much better? Probably not. Cooper, hopefully back in this week. Jameson Williams gave us 8 fantasy points. Downs gave us 14 in PPR. Just not a team that's good. My last scoring team, my lowest scoring team, my last place team. What a fucking broken team this is. Cousins, Stafford, Bryce Young, Pacheco, Zamir White, Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford looks so good early on, and he's become a little bit of an albatross. Javonte, but he could be part of an okay room, but he's just not helping as much as he should have. Javonte Williams, Blake Corum. I wonder if Ford would have been like a crusher play if Jameson started from week 1. That's going to be one that haunts me a little bit. Puka and Harrison coming together here. Not a bad day. Both of them make this roster. Zay Flowers, Deontay, both bad weeks. Curtis Samuel puts up 7.5 PPR points. Woohoo. DeMarcus Robinson 3.3. There's a Casey Washington period here, giving me a stone cold 0. Mingo. The future looking bright for Mingo in Dallas, but unfortunately not in this roster. Your number 1 overall player is Joey Bombs. His 5th entry, it looks like. You put in a Joe Burrow, Baker, Saquon team with Kamara, Najee, Dowdle, Bucky. So you don't need Saquon and Henry, but you probably needed one of Saquon or Henry and Kamara right now, would be my guess. Mayfield helping out a lot. Burrow or Lamar would also be pretty good for a drafter team. So if you have that stuff, you're probably doing okay right now. Bucky Irving, Dylan Labe. Okay. Chase, of course, Chase teams. I feel like all of these up top probably going to be Chase teams. Chase. No Chase. All right. So you know what? That's surprising. This guy, unique up top then, to not have Chase and me this high. Anyway, your number 1 guy, the rest of his team. Chase Cup, McLaurin, Godwin carried him for a while. Now he's gone. Jacoby Myers, Downs, McMillan, Chark, Boyd. Team could fall apart down the home stretch. Maybe. Kittle, Kmet, Hurst. All right. Anyway, that's drafters. Whatever. I know it happened, but I actually have one share of MVS and a puppy. Probably you looking for a Josh Allen stack would be my guess. Backdooring that. But there we go, guys. That's it for this week. So this video, again, this is like the least watched video I do. Even yesterday, Monday night, a lot of views. So check out, appreciate all the new viewers that did check that one out, even though they're probably not watching this one. But please do hit the like button and subscribe here. Again, every day I show up and do the work for this one. Same thing on NBA as well on the @SplashPlay NBA channel, which I'll be live on at 4 p.m. today. Crazy value on the NBA slate. So watch that one because that's honestly be a fun one. And it's a $5 tournament for NBA today. So if you want to come hang out, do that. But hit the like button here, subscribe here. Of course, support goes a long way. And I'll keep doing the work here, even though these videos, honestly, not the most fun, but then I do it for an hour and 15. So I guess maybe I have more fun doing it than I realized. But I just show you my process here. Here's the results. We'll see how it goes down the home stretch. We're going to be unique, if nothing else. Underdog, $1,000 of bonus cash, promo code SPLASH on there. Stochastic, 15% off, promo code SPLASH. Link in the description if you want to play NBA today. Their tools and data will carry you and give you a really good shot at doing something useful with it. Unabated, $30 off with promo code SPLASH. Of course, I'll be covering their prop markets for NBA and their conditional projections, which are the best in the business, I would say. Stochastic are great too because they're used by everyone though. Unabated, if you want to get an edge on the betting market, less people using them. Only really premium users are paying a good amount of money, so it's a good tool to get in there if you want to get some good bets. And of course, I give the data away for free later today. Thank you to all the fine folks who joined the channel. You too can support the show, and please do. If you're a regular here, I'm probably too hard. I need to figure out a better approach. But if you're a regular here, like, please support the show. Like, YouTube revenue fucking sucks, and I don't want to make more ads run. So help a brother out. Join down below for $4.99. It all supports the show here, much like TBS. I could not be putting on this masterpiece theater every day if it were not thanks to our fine supporters. So thank you for being a supporter and join a VIP Discord. Of course, get all that going. No, I need people just to pay me $5. I need 1,000 people to pay me $5 and then YouTube will take half of it. So we'll get to make YouTube money. I get to make money. Everybody wins. And then, literally this channel, if I had 1,000 paying subs, which would be hard given that, I get it. But I'd be crushing. So not crushing, but I'd be like, I'm good. This would be perfect. Hire a guest host, maybe. That's neither here nor there. We'll talk more about that in the offseason. Either way, appreciate you guys hanging out. Back in NBA at 4 p.m. No show tomorrow, but of course, Thursday back for a showdown on here as well. See you guys then. Gamble responsibly in the meantime, even though it is always money time. And I will see you guys later today on NBA and back here on Thursday. Enjoy your days. And of course, good luck. Bye-bye.